Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm Jeff Howard, and on Zoom I've got Jesse Cook III with me. Hey, Jesse.
Hello, how's it going? Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here, and I will just jump right into your introduction. But I won't. First, I'll say I want everyone listening to know that you are a really nice person.
Oh, thank you. So are you. We really hit it off,
I think so. You came out for Sherman Oaks Film Festival last year in December because your film Loom was an official selection.
Yes.
In fact, not just an official selection, but took home the Filmmakers Award for an outstanding short film sci-fi.
Yeah, stoked.
And I will add, for anyone who doesn't know, the Filmmakers Award, that comes from a special board, the Filmmakers Board, which is an all-alumni jury. In other words, that outstanding short film sci-fi came from your peers.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so the Grand Jury Awards, which everyone covets more in a way, and I don't know, just because the name sounds better, is from the Selection Jury, which is a bunch of old, out-of-tune people who don't make films anymore, but they have time to watch the 700-800 screeners and give an opinion.
Right.
Whereas our alumni jury, to which you will be invited from now on, because you are now alumni.
Amazing. Yeah.
The alumni jury, they just watch the official selections.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And so
I did not know that was the criteria behind it. That's amazing.
So
that's awesome.
It truly is decided by your peers.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, great. Awesome.
And as a kook who loves, I love variety of opinion, I agreed with this one, but I actually love it when this jury chooses. I'm like, oh, you love that film better than the other one. Interesting, cool. So
Yeah.
So yes, so you got that award from your peers for the film Loom, which
what a surprise too.
Kick-ass sci-fi short.
Yeah, thank you.
And you made it out. I believe you're. Well, you want to say where you're hailing from?
Yeah, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. So
I was going to say Boston, but
yeah. All the way. I'm from a town called Dartmouth, Mass. So it's a little bit south of Boston, but I just tell everyone Boston. So Massachusetts filmmaker, been here my entire life, always been a South Coast Mass kid. And I'm in Dartmouth now, born in Fall River, but lived in Boston for quite a few years. Yeah.
Excellent. Very cool. And that is why we're on Zoom instead of in person.
Yes.
And is Loom still on the festival circuit, or is it something people can catch online? I forgot to ask before we hit record.
It's still on the circuit, but we're nearing the end. We only have, I think, 2 more left to hear back from. So we've gone through the bulk of the gamut. We have a couple in Canada that I think that we're waiting to hear back from, and I think one more in Chicago, I believe. But we're 90+% of the way through the circuit. I think I've stopped submitting, probably around the 1 year mark. We started submitting to places in February of 25. And so when February came around, I'm just a firm believer of love this film. We've got into a couple of great places. Sherman Oaks was one of the places that we had, I had that circled on my page. It just felt like a great fit, for us. And I believe I followed both Sherman Oaks and Film Invasion LA for maybe close to a year, 6 months to 12 months before we even submitted to Sherman Oaks. You guys came across my algorithm on Instagram, and I just, you can tell when the lineups are announced, and the trailers and the posts and the frame grabs and all of these things. I was like, they are doing something really cool there. So and it just felt like a great fit. This is my 3rd short film, and I believe this was was this Sherman Oaks' 10th year, right?
Last year was our 10th anniversary. Yeah.
So that's a milestone for any festival. Pretty much every 5 years, it's a huge milestone. So 10th year is a big milestone. I was like, let me bookmark that. And I know a few people in Los Angeles, and I always would have shown up for it. To go see, friends and go out there for the premiere, which thankfully happened. We had the great premiere at the Look Dine-In. Seeing the DCP was truly awesome because it's like the film as you intended to actually see it projected and everything. So, and that's the first, that's the first ever DCP we've ever gotten projected.
Oh,
Still,
really? So,
still.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Is that because well, here I am now asking you a question because before hopping into your
yeah, yeah.
personal story, because as a festival runner, it interested me. But I've actually had people who made shorts, even actually like a cinematographer producer who worked with a film, an alumni of ours, came up to me after and said, "Thank you for showing the shorts in DCP," because
Yeah,
he said that other festivals would do DCPs for features but not shorts.
correct.
And I was like, "What?" Like,
Happens. Yeah, it happens all the time. And honestly, depending on some of them, I can't directly speak to it because I haven't done a feature yet. But from what I've heard from a couple other people, some places, I guess you can do either like a Dolby 5.1 or just like I'm pretty sure it's a Dolby 5.1 file with a ProRes HQ file. I guess you can do that. Um, and there's been places where for features that is also, like DCPs aren't guaranteed for features. So yeah, it's the first and only DCP that we've had. So to see it in the theater projected like that as desired was truly awesome. And it's
oh
like
yeah, yeah. And
it's like a breath
I
of
guess
God
I should
air for
mention
you
that,
as a
yeah,
filmmaker.
Sherman Oaks Film Festival for our eighth year, I believe. Maybe it was seventh, either our seventh or eighth. God, I can't remember now. We got wooed out to Glendale because this Look Dine in Cinemas had had someone on their staff who was reaching out to all the festivals, and they reached out to us, and I was like, "We're not moving."
Yeah.
Where I was admittedly one of those people stuck in the idea of like, you can't have the Sherman Oaks Film Festival
Glendale.
outside
Yeah.
of Sherman Oaks. And then
Yeah.
the truth is, there's almost no festivals in the city of their name anymore, especially in
Yeah,
the
there really
LA
yeah,
area.
yeah, there really isn't, yeah.
It
Yep,
really
food
isn't. And I
food
looked at the facilities and they were amazing and their projectors were new and their sound was, the sound is
yeah,
state of the art. So yeah, it is really nice to hear lots of filmmakers say that's the best my films looked. At the festival you were a part of, there was a film where the composer came up to us in the lobby after the screening and said, "I want you to know that's the best that sounded better than the reference
true,
speakers that I use when I'm composing. Like
truly.
that was amazing sound." And I was like, yeah, I mean, all we can take credit for is that we said yes to a theater that wooed us out there and said, check us out before you say no. And
Yeah.
honestly, the other amazing thing is that lobby they let us take over.
I know the whole second floor, basically, like,
Whole second floor is
amazing.
ours. We even get to put our schedule
Put the
on the
backdrop,
TVs.
yeah, 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 put the
Yeah.
backdrop up like, the red carpet, quick walk and talk stuff. That was great, that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It really creates that really wonderful atmosphere we aim for.
Yeah.
So I was glad you got to be a part of it.
Oh, man, it was awesome. It was a blast, truly was, and quite a few friends came out. We all had a great weekend, out
Yeah,
there,
it
so
doesn't suck that
awesome.
there's a nice besides the lobby to hang out with your friends in, there's also like the theater has that really nice bar and stuff. If after your
Yeah,
screening you were like, I want to go hang out with my friends who came out to support me and let them all buy me a drink,
right.
hopefully you got treated.
I did, yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got treated quite well, so that's good. Yeah, it was a good time. Great
Kind of
time.
funny. I've never used that joke before, but now I should like say every time like someone comes into the lobby, now that I get to work the lobby instead, I don't get to moderate Q&As anymore because there's once we got to three screens at once,
I know you mentioned that. Yeah, yeah, you have
right?
your own great
Yeah.
moderators too. I forget the woman's name, but she
Well,
was
yeah, it was probably Christian, and she's wonderful.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, she
Christian
was
Scott.
great. Yep, Christian Scott. Yep, and she has some history in Boston too. If I recall, we were chatting about she either like went to college out there or lived there for a short period of time and
Quite a talented filmmaker
yeah.
herself. But yeah, it is. It took about a year or so, but now we've got so many great Q&A moderators that I don't feel bad that I don't do it. Plus, I have the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that might have been our conversation at the gala then when I was like, I'm not doing Q&As anymore, but hop on my podcast when you
Exactly,
get a chance.
exactly. Yep. That was so ever since then, I checked out, I subbed to, Apple Podcast for Discover Indie Film, and you know, really happy to be here. But as far as the festival circuit goes, we're pretty much near the end of it, and I think I think I kind of was about to say to make a point. I just believe in um, you know, we had a great time doing it. We got to these great festivals, Sherman Oaks included, and like it's I don't like dragging things on for because sometimes people will keep submitting for 3 years or longer even to film festivals, and I just like bookmarking kind of I view it as like a chapter of like my life and my work and filmography, and then you can't get better until you move on to the next one, like
Yeah,
whatever that might be.
and that was all to lead me up to say, even though I could say this off the air, so to speak, but
Right,
when you release it, wherever, whether it's online or through some platform, make
right.
sure to send us the link so we can put the link in the show notes so people
Yes.
listen. Because the wild thing, of course, one of the wild things about podcasts, right, is it's not live. It ends up on people's phones, and it is always amazes me, like when I look at the view counts or listen counts or play
Right.
counts, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
like, stuff. I've been doing this podcast now 9 years, and like the stuff from year one is still getting listened to.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so it's obviously key to have that the link to wherever you release it, so that people who hear me talk about how much I love your ending and I am
Oh
gonna find
man. Yeah,
out
I
during
can't
this
wait. I can't wait to get into.
conversation
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if
Yeah.
if you if you think I'm onto something with my theory,
Okay, great.
feel free to say, Jeff, there's no right answer. But so before we get to all that, before we get to Loom, and by the
Yeah.
way, nerdy, this is how big a film nerd I am. Should the title Loom have always been inside brackets? Because in your opening titles, it's in brackets.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. It should be. Which I mean, some places it's really I don't begrudge places that have programmed it without the brackets because a lot of it is just sometimes brackets and backslashes don't like when you're programming the web URL, they don't translate and it creates like a weird character in the display. So if people just want to put, all caps Loom, then cool. But ideally it would be, within like the coding brackets to kind of reference like that IO technology that we have
Right.
showcased.
Well,
Yeah.
amusingly, Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Invasion LA, we just pull data from Film Freeway.
Oh,
So
great.
on Film Freeway, you don't have the brackets. So even though I noticed it in the titles when I rewatched it
Yeah.
this morning, and it's on your poster with the brackets, and I'm like, oh, if you had had the brackets on Film Freeway, then they would have carried over because
Oh, interesting.
all
Okay.
our staffers, whoever's pulling the data that day
That's
and
how they
doing
lock it.
our web page and whatever, yeah, we just pull the data. So it's up to you. And I
Gotcha.
bet that would
Okay.
have made you alphabetically first.
Oh, that would be hilarious. That would have been wicked funny. That would have been funny.
It is funny because
Yeah.
like on
Yeah.
our official selections page, it's always we try to be alphabetical, try to be fair.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
But so I could change it for you after the fact. I could add your brackets, but
Yeah. 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 By all means. Yeah. Please.
oh
Please
nice.
do.
All right. So now we've talked about brackets instead of you and
Yeah.
your film. So you want to jump in? You want to just
Yeah.
jump into your personal story? What
Yeah.
it's a very creative film. I mean, you did, the things writer, director, and a lot more.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can be
Color
short,
grading too. Yeah.
obviously.
I did color too. Yeah.
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 So
Um,
when did you catch the bug early? Were you a creative kid?
Not necessarily. I didn't take any theater class in high school or anything. I caught it in college. I just thought for the longest time that going to the movie theater was I thought that was a hobby. And then somewhere around 18, 19, 20, it just I started having my own strong reactions and opinions about stuff, and um it was just something that a a switch flipped, in me. And I went to business school first, and I have a degree in marketing and finance that I don't really use at all.
Right. So under you really didn't even your interest wasn't even peaked till after or
Yeah,
right at the end of your undergraduate degree.
correct. Yeah, and I remember having a very um I thought the world was going to come down on me because, imagine being like a junior, you're finishing your junior year of college, and then you go, hey, mom and dad, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And I was expecting them to say, you know, or like I was fearful that they would, say, no, 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 but they were literally the most supportive parents ever. They totally understood, and in hindsight, I feel silly even thinking that like my parents would ever sort of, like dissuade me from it, because they have always been like my biggest supporter, my sister's biggest supporter, and they're just the best parents in the world. And we were always at Blockbuster and Hollywood Video and Strawberries and all these video stores when I was a kid, and we were always going to the movie theater. Always, it was pretty much like a biweekly thing, really. Um, and that's where all of it kind of stems from. And I remember just always being at the movie theater or the video store with my parents, and I remember like, Jim Carrey movies that we would have on VH. Like we wore out the tape on Liar Liar on on a Jim Carrey movie called Liar Liar. We wore out the tape and had to buy a second one. So it was just always a family event, and it still is. We still always get together and watch movies and go to the movies. And when my sister had uh her kid, so she's the first grandchild, but when my sister had her daughter, we literally just rented out a private movie theater to go see Mission Impossible. So we just rented out a movie theater on like a matinee noontime show. And she was she was probably only 6 or 7 months old at the point. And for my birthday, we went to go see Mission Impossible, and we did it all as a family in like a private screening. So even to this day, it's always been a staple for us to always, pop something on, TV or go to the movie theater as many times as we can. So that's where all the love stems from. And I thought that it was just kind of a hobby, and lo and behold, you know, I made the decision to go to film school. It was an accelerated course. It wasn't a full MFA, three or 4 year program. I went to like a 1 year, almost like a trade school kind of thing, which I think is so awesome. And I wish more. I hope that if there's any students, or would be students listening, the 1 year trade schools are awesome. And sure, you might not get a BFA or an MFA or something like that, but they actually teach you how to build up lights and how to edit and how to color, and really hands on. And that's what the stuff that I wanted, especially coming out of a 4 year program, like, 4 years of undergrad. The last thing I wanted to do was do another 4 years of like master's work or get like a second BFA. That was the last thing I wanted to do. So the 1 year, kind of trade school um, was really ideal for me. And that was at the time, Boston University offered it. So it was Boston University Center for Digital Arts, and that's what they offered.
That's certainly a fully legit program. If it's
Yeah, it was great. It was like the satellite campus in Waltham, Massachusetts, and they since don't offer it anymore. They only offered it for about 8 or 9 years, I'd say. But I was lucky that we were one of the or that I was part of one of those classes when they offered it, and it just came at the right time. And ever since then, I graduated there in 2013, and pretty much been working since 2014 to today in film and TV. I started off on working on set for commercials in the AD department, and then thankfully I finally broke into features and was a production office assistant, and then production secretary, and then I made a lateral move into working in VFX, and I was like a data manager, IO coordinator, and eventually worked my way up to VFX editor. So that's kind of been my last 10, 12 years in the industry. And whenever I can, I've saved money, and, Loom was my third short film. So kind of been making films for about 10 years now, just kind of in whenever I can, every 3 or 4 years on average.
And basically, yeah, so it sounds like that program was focused on all the practical, like a normal two-year film school or a 3 year film school, but often they're two, I think. It's, one part practical, one part theoretical. And this is just all the practical. And then you do the film theory on your own by by being a fan of
Uh,
cinema and all that.
yeah,
And
1000%.
and
And
it, and it gave you the tools to get hired, gave
yeah,
you the tools to get in the door. And
yeah,
you've and it's very interesting because so many people think that you've got to do LA, New York, whatever thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
there's enough
yeah.
production in the Boston area for you.
Yeah. There is I think industry wide, we're looking at kind of quite a plateau this year, or between this year and last year. I think a lot of American films are being shot in Canada and UK for tax incentive purposes. Um, so, but normally, yeah, like Boston's been. I mean, I worked on um, a Greta Gerwig movie called Little Woman. I worked on Equalizer 2 and Daddy's Home and
Yeah.
Captain
And
America.
and you worked your way up. What's the VFX title you mentioned?
VFX. So I started off as an IO coordinator. So you're kind
Yeah.
of an in-house data manager, and you kind of handle deliveries and organizing data. And then a natural progression from there would be a VFX editor, where you can kind of manage the edit and converse with the artists to hit their notes and just make sure color pipeline is
Right. And
accurate.
and I asked for that clarification to ask, I mean, is that something also that can be remote anyway? Like, can you do that role
Especially,
for
yeah,
something far away? So all of a sudden you're global.
yeah, yeah. I mean, especially since COVID, everything just got very remote, and a lot of maybe not the big places like ILM or something. I don't know, but if you're a boutique house, I think a lot of your staff are probably working remote, and then you just give them some kind of workstation to patch into, and they can just work from home. And that's what I was, where I'm talking to you now, pretty much ever since COVID. And whenever I have gone back to work for that VFX house, I'm just working from here, you know, and they're only not too far from me, but I've uh, I've kind of gotten used to the whole work from home atmosphere. It's kind of a new norm in the VFX world.
It really is. It's becoming the new norm all over the place for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, not
absolutely.
just I mean, really anywhere. I mean, especially if it's just a standard desk job. You might have oh, you got to be in the office one or 2 days a week, but you know, on average, you can still work from home pretty much anywhere depending on what your field is. But
Yeah, absolutely. And heck, if I personally know at least three post-production people,
yeah,
mostly editors, but I think also like sound, but
yeah, yeah.
who did leave the LA area because a
So
couple
expensive,
settled in Tennessee, like out just they were like, I can for what I have a studio apartment in North Hollywood for, I can rent a 3-bedroom house 20
literally,
minutes outside of Nashville.
legit. Yeah, and
And
it's so funny. That's the fourth time this week that I've talked about Nashville. I know so
It's
many people
funny.
who
It's
have,
really,
it's
although I have been
booming.
told now that was because that was 2021, and
Yeah,
now I'm told like, yeah, now Nashville is expensive. As expensive as the Valley.
now you're late to the party. Yeah, yeah,
It is. You've always got to find the place that no one's decided to move to yet,
right.
and I don't know where that is now. But
I
then
don't know.
again, I my generation won the lottery on not getting fucked on where you
Yeah,
live.
yeah,
I
totally.
I happen to be just old enough that we got into the LA housing market before it
Before
became.
it really went, yeah. Like I remember reading some stat where it's 92% of inhabitants in LA don't own their property; they just rent.
Wow.
92%.
I mean, I don't know about
That was
that,
a
but
lot.
all I know is as someone who's sat in a home and watched it double in value and more, we
Yeah,
just sit there going, yeah, we're those people who go, well, we can't afford our neighborhood anymore, so it's a damn good thing we,
that you bought when you did. Yeah,
there's, it breaks my heart when I think about, I was born in the 60s, so
yeah, yeah,
clearly the world has gotten less fair for the next generation and the
yeah,
generation after that and I know
yeah.
we think about, will our college student when she graduates, will she have to live with us forever?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it's a very, European kind of, like, the kids don't, flew the coop until later, or until like they're married. Something, in some European countries, they,
Yeah.
until they're married, they
Yeah,
stay.
no, I mean, there's an advantage to multiple jobs. All right, that's a subject we won't talk, but I do know that you, before we started recording, you also mentioned your Portuguese grandma. So
Oh
I,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I've been to Portugal, so I'm aware that that's strong family unit.
Super strong family unit. Yeah. And we're Azorean Portuguese, so we're from the Azores. So it's like a set of islands in the Atlantic, about halfway, roughly halfway between where I am and actual mainland Portugal. So we're Azorean, but my Vavo, that's my great grandmother, and my actual grandma I just called grandma. But Loom has a very strong tie to my maternal grandma, Grandma Dell. And the earliest inspiration for Loom is just all about her, really. Like there's two specific moments that I remember having with her. And when I was making my first short film, Neapolitan, um we started shooting in 2016, but we hadn't finished it before she passed away. We had to wait for a reshoot, and the reshoot needed to happen in July because it was like 4th of July weekend and all this stuff. So we needed to wait like 8 months to do a reshoot, and she died during that period. And I remember when that film, I was rushing to get it done and colored, and like the final sound mix and everything, because I wanted to submit. I'm pretty sure I wanted to, submit it to Sundance or something.
For sure. Well, I mean,
It,
because that based on the years, I mean, that's like you're 3 years out of school, right? You're three
yeah,
years out of that
yeah,
BU program.
yeah,
And so you were working, and already within the first 3 years, you had already written something that you loved enough to shoot.
yeah, yeah. And it wasn't necessarily a short film. It ended up being 39 minutes, so we didn't get programmed many places. But it was something that I really wanted to do. And it's so funny because I remember when we needed to hit a deadline, and um I stayed up pretty much all night to make sure that we hit the deadline. So I went to bed around like 5:36 in the morning, and I had to, call out of work. I kind of lied and said I had a stomach bug. So I lied just because I spent literally, I burnt the midnight oil getting this film done. So then I called out of work. But when I went to bed, I passed out, and then I had this dream, and it was so vivid. And normally I'm not someone who really remembers dreams ever at all. I just, you wake up, and then the idea of the dream dissolves after, 10 or 20 minutes, and then you just kind of go on with your day. But even still to this day, this is like going on 8 years, or 9 years now. And it's still so vivid. I was in my grandma's kitchen, in her, in her home when I was a child, and she was sitting in her normal chair. And it just, she looked at me and told me, she's like, "You made a really good picture." Because that was her generation. She would call movies pictures and TV shows programs. And that was her generation. So she just looked at me and said, "You made a really good picture. I'm really proud of you." And it was a super short kind of conversation. And then I just woke up, and I literally haven't been able to shake it. It's just always in the back of my mind. And another another instance was, you know, kind of involving my grandfather, but through my grandma's perspective when she was living with us, because my grandfather died when I was a senior in high school, and she had moved in with us towards the end there. And um, it was at that time I was in college, so he had already been dead like probably 3 or 4 years or so. And she, was staying with us, and I went downstairs during like summer break, and I just said, "Oh, hey, good morning. I'm gonna make like waffles or something." And she's like, "I saw your grandfather last night." And without even, I just said, "Oh, like, where'd you see him?" It didn't even dawn on me, it didn't dawn on me until I left the room, that I was like, "What is she talking about? Like, grandpa's been dead for like, almost 4 years now." And it's just so interesting that in the moment I didn't even second guess it or second guess her. I was just, oh, where'd you see him? And she's like, oh, he was right in front of the fireplace playing with mints in his pocket because he always carried mints in his pocket. Um, and I, it's just one of those things. I don't know what to believe in necessarily. There's a lot of things that people do believe in, as we know. Um, and I don't know what to make of it, but I think that, for my grandma, that moment with, her departed husband, my grandfather, that didn't seem coincidental. And I know that for me, for sure, like the very night that I finished the movie and uploaded it, I have this dream of her, and she's telling me, you made a really good picture. I'm really proud of you. And that just didn't feel coincidental. It's almost like she was watching the whole time in some kind of way in the ether of the world, you know, whatever that might be. And those are two stories and there's a few others, but I won't go into them. But those were, two that really, especially the one that I experienced, personally, just really stuck with me. And, you know, that was the basis for Loom, like the first initial inspiration behind it. And, I think that bedroom scene in Loom, when, spoiler alert, I guess, but when Jude, kind of comes in and
Well,
it's
it's
just
not really a spoiler because
yeah,
the film, it's sci-fi, but the film is about receiving recorded data from right.
Yeah,
It's funny. Oh man, when we started these festivals in 2016 and Black Mirror was like huge,
the thing. Yeah.
I felt bad for every sci-fi filmmaker because
Yeah.
every Q&A, some a-hole in the audience would raise their hand and mention an episode of Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Yeah. Yeah. We got our fair share of that too. And I don't take it as an insult. I mean, awesome, cool. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
think,
I only mentioned it to say that, it 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 has not the connection to Black Mirror, but it just has, somebody getting data from a loved one's mind, so to speak,
yeah,
after they're
yeah,
gone,
yeah, yeah,
possibly
and
after they're gone.
yeah. And
And
because
and yeah, so it's not a spoiler to say that in Loom that there's a visit, and we actually don't know.
yeah,
We don't know if it's virtual or actual.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Which is very cool, which is not something Black Mirror went anywhere near.
which I love that, I'm kind of playing it, purposely ambiguous. I think that's fun. It's not, I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. I'll never, assume that I am, or whatever films I do are, kind of a universal sort of fit, especially with this one. Maybe my first two were very dialogue driven and plot heavy. But coming out of those two, I wanted to do something that was the almost like the other end of the spectrum. I wanted something to be like, a little bit more. I want something to be a little bit more about feeling. And even if you don't necessarily, build your own theory, or if you don't necessarily maybe get it on a first try, as long as you felt something there from the inside out, then that was my main goal with, this whole film. So there's a lot of thoughts and ideas about, are they actual, married couple? Are they family member, siblings or something? And I think that's just going to vary depending on the viewer and whatever that person's relationships with people in their lives. I think it's all going to depend on what you have going on in your life, whatever kind of grief that you've had to endure. You're gonna maybe see a bit of that, hopefully, in Loom with these two characters. And like the whole idea of the film, I guess I'll do like a brief synopsis. It's about getting a data vault received, because we're living about 50 years out in the future with chip implants into the actual, biology of a person. And, when they pass away, it goes to next of kin, whoever that might be, or some, whoever's appointed. And you're able to play back that data vault with all these stored memories with a paired headset called the Loom IO.
Yeah.
And
Which is essentially a virtual reality helmet. Yeah.
this right here. Yeah, right
I
there.
can see it. Yes, it is.
Background,
It
yeah.
is.
Yep, right there in the background of my room.
And hey, people can see that behind you in the
And the
podcast
thumbnail, yeah.
shot. But yeah, go on.
And the um and the where am I going with this? Hold on.
Well, but
Oh yeah,
she
so
receives the data vault
yeah,
of someone who's, well, who we think has passed.
yeah. And like my whole thing was, what does the new tech of, because when people die today, they get, iPhone photos and videos. And when I was a kid, you have DV tapes and Polaroids, and maybe your generation, when someone passed away, you had Super 8 home movies or something, and actual film, film prints and stuff. And what does that look like 50 years from now? Where tech gets even, smartphones are very invasive personally as it is, but there is a real path, and people are trying to develop these sort of chip technologies, that I really think that could be a real thing. So what does the grieving process look like, about 50 years out from now or so, where, the tech is even more invasive and actually becomes a part of your actual, biology, implanted into your actual biology. So that was something that I just thought about, ran with it, used, albeit it was a dream. And I know that we're kind of going on, oh, was it a dream or is it reality? Blah, blah. But I took the basis of the dreams with my grandmother and kind of put it into this, futuristic concept. And that's the basis for Loom.
And that's why it's such a sad, well, that's why your peers and myself really really loved this story and loved the
Yeah.
way, by the way, very well directed.
Thank you.
And you
Thank
probably
you.
heard this many times, but I also have to give a shout out to your composer,
Oh man. Yeah. Schmidt. Yeah. Steven.
because that, talk about a soundtrack that is a soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
genuine.
Yep.
It is a composed soundtrack. I have it on my screen. Stephen C. Schmidt.
Yeah. Schmidt. Yeah. Schmidt absolutely killed it. And he,
And it, boy, it just, it's so well directed. It's so well acted. The
thank you so
production
much. Yeah.
design is excellent. That helmet behind you looks
Yeah.
super cool and futuristic.
Yeah.
And
The
then the
production design, the
music is like
costumes were
makes it
great.
all another level, I
Oh
think.
yeah, yeah. Like because we talked about this a lot because it's kind of like a one location film almost, and there's the set pieces are the location, so there's no exteriors. You're just so even more divided, or sorry, you're even more separated from society because the tech is so invasive now. So through production design and costume design, we tried to just create sets and create looks create sets and create looks that had kind of some kind of external architecture to it in an inside space. And there's very uniquely in my opinion, very unique and angular silhouettes in the costumes, and the lighting and set decoration with the production design. The lighting is very interesting, in terms of like where the lights are actually placed as practicals in the set. So that was something. And then the music, just, if I can delve into the music for a quick moment, Schmidt, I'm always gonna I'm always gonna have this practice moving forward, because my first two films that I've done, we get picture lock almost in a way, or like we were going through like the edit, and then I get a composer on. And this was the opposite. I was talking to, because we started shooting in September of 24. I was only a 3-day shoot. So September of 2024. But, Schmidt was writing score for me probably as early as April or May of 24. So about 3 or 4 months earlier. And, I will never not do that ever again, because it was so informative and, in a very unique way, it felt like I was trying to, in past films, I was trying to get, score to fit what we shot. Whereas this time, getting even samples, they weren't close to being final or anything, but just getting some kind of melodies in and some kind of sound in for my composer, it was informing my photography. And I thought that was such a very cool thing that I haven't done before. I haven't had the luxury of doing that. I know, like, on properly, budgeted features and stuff, it's pretty much how things go, but I haven't had that luxury before. Um, and he was, just giving me sound bites, and he wrote, the main theme that is, it's recurring through the film in different sort of motifs, and he just absolutely, crushed it. So I was working with, a lot of, musical tracks about 3 to 4 months before we even rolled, on day 1 of Principal. So
I mean, I always do this. I always try to pump up, but that music was inspired by the script, and I'm sure you were giving him some
oh yeah,
storyboards
plenty, yeah,
or
plenty.
image of the helmet you were like you gave him a very clear idea
Oh yeah.
of the universe he was writing for.
Absolutely, absolutely, and, there was a lookbook that I had, it's a PDF lookbook, almost just like a film strip. It's almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with Tumblr at all, but I remember, like, back in my day, Tumblr was a huge thing, and, it was kinda just, I do these lookbooks where it just you scroll, and it's never-ending photos, and there's almost no text, on my initial lookbook, just sort of like a vibe mood piece, um, and so I was giving him stuff, for that, and just movie references, and we were building the prop helmet, like, the Loom IO helm. We were building that, you know, concurrently, during the pre-production, as well. So every kind of update that I gave him, I would just, from my prop maker, whose his name is Sean Hoshik, uh, any kind of update that I was getting from Sean, I was always sending, Steven Schmidt, photos of that. And I was like, I want this to feel futuristic. And, there's some kind of like Reznor Nine Inch Nails, vibes to it. And, um, early or, not early, but earlier than now, Kanye West, stuff like, the Yeezus album is very kind of, stark and cold, and, was just giving him, options to, listen to other music that I thought could fit, and movies that, are a huge influence on the film visually, not just like from personal experience, but, movies that, were inspiring from just a set piece standpoint. So I was giving him a bunch of stuff to write the score to, and I had the luxury of getting a lot of samples months prior to filming.
Very cool. And I'll add that you do something so smart, I think, which obviously, well, I guess so I'm a sci-fi fan, and
Yeah.
obviously, like one of the big jokes of much of my life as a sci-fi fan is that sci-fi cinema is way too aggressive we all joke about what the year 2001 really looked like
Yeah.
and then that Marty McFly's floating skateboard was like turned out to
Yeah.
be 2013 and like we're nowhere near. So what a very something I appreciate about Loom is that it is futuristic in very cool subtle ways while still
Yeah.
looking like this a lot like our time because I think
Yeah.
we know it's not going to be that radically different.
Yeah, it's not gonna be Blade Runner or, like Marty McFly on, it's not gonna be like that, and, um, I
There's
just
just going to be
wanted.
little touches. Like instead of a smartphone, it's going to be inside our body. Instead of a this. And
Yeah,
I'm sure if
and
you had a bigger budget, you're the kind of person who would write stuff that appears on a contact lens or something.
yeah,
But
and
but at this budget, what you did is you made it look very, very much not of our time, while still being very familiar to our time, which
yeah,
I think
yeah.
is the way to go with sci-fi now.
I think so too, and it's kind of funny because a lot of, I feel like I've submitted to a lot of sci-fi specific places, and I feel like we're not zany enough. We're not quintessentially, sci-fi genre. I guess there's no aliens and spaceships, and some of the lineups that you see are very like, elevated B genre style of sci-fi, and Loom is kind of more of a regular drama just with a futuristic sci-fi backdrop. And but that's like what I love about it, because I do think that, there are things, in the film that, like you said, do feel unique, and that's all of my department heads really coming together. I mean, we had I wanted to treat this as much of as like a feature film, because I've worked in pre-production on large features that are like 100 $200 million films. Like I've worked on set for those things, and in pre-production, and I was, telling myself I was, I want to treat this like it's an actual feature. and not, you know, just say, "Hey, we're all showing up here to shoot the thing," and, just do it that way. I wanted, we did a proper location scout, and, about 3 weeks before we started filming, my gaffer and DP were talking to my production designer about how we can incorporate practical lights into her set build, and, um, we had, actual costume fittings and, like, a hair and makeup test day, and, that's a lot of, like, budget goes into that, for sure, and it's people's time and money and energy, going into it, and, um but I really think it's all worth it, and, when I watch Loom anyway, I see all of the work that we all did. I had about 22 crew members on that film with me. So it's very sizable for such a small and intimate film, but I think having everyone just focusing on wearing one hat, and not having, you know, 5 people wear 3 hats or something, I think that that's so important because you can really drift away with focusing on one thing, and then you kind of discount the other things if you're trying to wear multiple hats, and that's why I didn't really produce this. I had a great production team, Jimmy Luke and Fifi Ling. um, they were great. They handled a lot of the stuff. They really wanted me to just be a director for the first time, and I thought that was great because I just focused on performance and blocking and all that stuff. I wasn't worrying about when lunch is gonna land or something, or, where's the what day's the rental coming in, and, for whatever. And, it was a relief on my end, and, I think just having everyone, focus on their one role, it all shows up on screen, and I just love the look of it.
Absolutely. I'm going to add a little more praise to the look, which is you do well. Actually, there's an aesthetic, obviously, that you did in post where, and
Yeah.
the story begins. I don't think this is a spoiler, but
Mm.
if there is a link for people to watch it in advance, click that link now. No,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
but there is obviously there's when she has on the helmet and is viewing stuff from his data vault,
Mhm.
and that has a very unrealistic look at first. You give it a look that makes it
Yeah.
definite, and then of course in her real world, it's very definitely real world, and then you very subliminally start merging those two looks throughout the
Right,
story to
right.
help add to the wonderful open-endedness of that ending. We're like, okay, so the worlds have merged now in a lot of interesting ways. Like,
Yeah.
is this, and yeah, and that's, and look, in a short film to build two worlds and then merge them, that really respect what you did there.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, a lot of it's just preparation and talking about it, and, um, listening to, people, and, you know, I the sound edit is another thing, so the sound edit, there's different filtration systems. We kinda had, like, a quadrant-based, process about how we're gonna process, the Loom calls, which is funny because 'cause we're on a Zoom call now, but, like, the Loom calls when she's getting futuristic phone calls in, we call it Loom calls. When she's getting a Loom call in, what's that processing gonna sound like? What is the actual Louis OS gonna sound like? The actual AI system, what's that gonna sound like? And the memories have their own, processing, and, so we had, like, when we were kind of going through the early edit, in post, I remember talking to my sound editor, um, Jeremy Eisner, um, about what's something that we can do, and we basically just we divided all the scenes and put them in different quadrants almost, and that's how we kind of
All right.
approached it.
So the
And
four quadrants almost represented four worlds you were building.
exactly,
You're like,
exactly.
okay, this is in 100% reality world. This is 100%. And then these are very cool. I actually just made the conscious decision too. Not that I wasn't listening, that I'm not going to tell anyone listening what I have concluded about the ending. I
Okay.
will, I will say that to Jesse when we stop.
Okay, okay, cool, 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 great, great,
but,
great.
and just, well enough. But I made that decision because I'm asking this question, which is
Okay.
because this world is so there's so much flesh on the bones of this world you created, this future. Is it a proof of concept for a bigger cut? Like, I mean, clearly no, it's not.
It's
This,
not. So yeah.
no,
So
this is not a proof of concept. This really is for itself because everything in it
I
could be part
know.
of an
I
even
know.
bigger
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. I know it, and I get that a lot for this one. Not Neapolitan. Neapolitan was my first one, but for Peppermint, my second film, that was like a political courtroom drama. But Peppermint and yeah, between Peppermint and Loom, we've gotten that kind of feedback. Is this a proof of concept? And I can 1000% see how this is a proof of concept. Like there's a lot of areas to explore. Um, the irony is that I have another feature that I wanted to do that is not sci-fi, and I'm trying to get that off the ground. But it's not sci-fi, but there is very much like an emotional through line from that film that I wrote called The Dark That Dwells. And that's maybe more, I guess horror adjacent. It's more of like a romantic tragedy kind of film, but there are some gothic horror elements to it. But um, that was a through line to Loom. And I remember I was talking to Jimmy, my producer, and my sister, who's my costume designer as well, Nicole. Um, and I was talking to both of them, at different points, and I was like, I don't want to do a proof of concept for The Dark That Dwells. I want to do, you know, I just want to do that as a thing. And then that's how Loom came about. And I was like, well, how can we, or Jimmy posed to me rather, how can you do a short film? Because he called the elephant in the room, and he told me, he's like, hey, listen, it's been 5 years since you did a short, so it's going to be tough to get any kind of thing off the ground if you don't kind of keep going and keep the resume and keep the process going. And I said, fair point. Absolutely. And then that's when kind of Loom came about. So Loom, in like a funny way, I guess you're half right, because it is kind of like it's a proof of concept to me, but not to to not investors. Um, of just there's an emotional complexity that Loom and this would be feature do share. There's quite an overlap on that Venn diagram, and I definitely explored that emotional complexity in Loom, which would then hopefully prep me for the Dark That Dwells. But it's not directly, but I can absolutely see a lot of people have made the Black Mirror. We talked about that earlier, but a lot of people have made the Black Mirror comparison. That's a massive compliment to me. I don't take any offense to that at all. Um, and Black Mirror is like one-off episodics, um, or yeah, like anthology, yeah, anthology style. But Loom, it definitely has some legs in the future, but at the moment, there's no series or no larger feature. Despite the groundwork, I think that's why I keep getting maybe some of that is because for Peppermint and Loom specifically, the world building is feature adjacent, and there is avenues I think to investigate with those stories moving forward. But I think the reason why we've gotten a lot more love on the short film circuit between those two films, and especially Loom, is that we treated it as like a feature just downscaled into a short film, and I think that's why it has resonated with quite a few people.
And you know what? I'm just gonna make a hopefully not too lame analogy, which is or probably not, but it's not a proof of concept. It might have been proof of something to yourself, but it was also you were just hitting the storytelling gym.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
you were keeping your muscles active. It
yeah,
sounds like you said, I want to show, it's been 5 years and I've got a story I think is great, and I'm
yeah,
going to show myself that I can. Yeah, it was
yeah, that count.
ambitious,
Yeah,
right? It was the most ambitious thing you've gone for, and you
easily, yeah,
you
easily the most
check
ambitious.
those boxes. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
and
kind of
there's
silly to say hitting the gym, but yeah, you hit the filmmaking gym.
1,000%. And I'm not necessarily. This is a self critique of mine, but I'm not. I know people who are able to go out and do a short film every 6 months. I just can't do that. I'm not that kind of writer. I don't, you know, I don't I haven't directed other people's scripts, and I haven't written for other people to direct, and I don't constantly do it. And it is good to do it periodically, but I need to feel strongly about the thing that I'm doing. Because I really I'm not trying to do like large scale stuff. I'm really trying to do a lot of intimate stuff. That's what I'm focused on is a lot of intimate works at the moment. And Loom is kind of like the first, I think, lily pad on that path. So whenever you're doing something that's very, intimate and personal, it's tough to go back to go to the well every 4 to 6 months and do like one or two short films a year. That's very tough and taxing. And um I think that, I'm choosing to, be a little bit precious about it. Maybe that's the wrong outlook. Maybe I'm being too self-critical or self-precious myself, but that's at least my outlook. And basically, whenever I do something, it's because I really feel it, inside me to go and do something. So that's why I have some kind of semi-long gaps, in the filmography. But
You're also putting a roof over your head and food in your belly
yeah,
in those gaps too. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
let's be
exactly,
real
yeah,
about
exactly,
that
yeah,
too, right?
exactly, yeah,
And you've mentioned you've completed this feature screenplay, so that's not exactly nothing. You don't do
exactly.
that. You don't do
That's
that
how
in
I
a
feel.
weekend.
That's how I feel about it too. Like that's exactly how I feel about it. And it's not just Doctor. I have three others too. So I have a good portfolio, and I think that first one that I mentioned, Dark That Dwells. I think that's the beginning piece, and I have two others fully finished, and then I'm kind of close to being halfway through on this fourth one at the moment. But I have a good portfolio, and I'm hoping that things can, between the Loom circuit, we've gotten a lot of love for it. We've won, thankfully at your festival and a couple other places as well. But I'm hoping that between that and then the writing portfolio, and I think just like my industry, you know, me working in the industry as just like a day job person, like I'm certainly well below the line, but just I think working in the industry for over a decade, I'm hoping all that stuff can cultivate into something where people can look at me and say, I'm not like this 23-year-old kid with a dream anymore. It's like he's a working professional doing his own thing, and he's made a couple of really good short films, and I'm hoping all that can kind of cultivate into meeting more people and getting some kind of budget to shoot some kind of feature in the near future. So
Yeah, absolutely. And look, besides what you accomplished with Loom and that, I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a conscious decision by yourself, but the genres of sci-fi and horror are the best for indie. Are
yeah,
the
they are.
best the best
They are. Yeah, they're bankable. They're
but they're
sometimes
also bankable because they I defend it in that it's not just the commercial bankability, it's the fact that that the audience doesn't get treated well by Hollywood in those genres. I'm
right.
sorry, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
like
Yeah, totally.
there's no demand. It's I always not to get myself in trouble with too many folks, but like when an indie filmmaker wants to do a period drama,
Yeah,
I'm like, you think you can beat Hollywood at that game?
yeah,
But when it's just about high quality sci-fi and horror, it's pretty easy to beat Hollywood because they they always let us down.
yeah. They
And then
do.
we walk
They
out of
really do. They
right? And
really
we
do.
walk out
Yeah.
and we go, "Oh, that would have been really good if."
If yeah, if
Even shit that gets nominated for Oscars, it's like,
yeah,
so glad
and
it got nominated. Too bad it was flawed.
yeah, and something that I think is really matters to me anyway is in those two particular genres, whatever kind of indie production companies or private investors, what like however you do get the money, those are the two genres that I think embrace the risk of first time directors or just writer directors in general. Not many people are in like the horror space or sci-fi space. Oh, we're gonna get like a writing team to go and do this thing and then get another director. I think those two genres relatively synonymous with a writer director being the same person. And there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of embracing of the risk to getting a first time director or just an undiscovered, director to give them a budget and actually do something, special and cohesive with what their vision is.
Yeah. Yeah, and heck, I mean, you've probably heard it before, but for what your budget of Loom was, you know, to make a film that's about 6 times longer might only take 3 times the budget
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
gets more efficient when you get
You get
like
more efficient.
it is always funny when someone makes a short and then they look me in the eye and go, "Yeah, I guess for what I ended up spending, I could have made a feature."
It's true. And, there's quite a few, and I'm sure that you've seen some, for Loom, we had a lot of bang for buck. And a lot of it's just because of friends I've met, on set in the production office. Um, and I've been friends with them for, you know, I mean, my sister is a great costume designer. She's worked on huge movies. Um, and, I've been with her for life, but like, my DP I've known for 12 years. My producer, Jimmy, I've known him for 8. Production designer, I've known her for 12. So I go way back with a lot of these people. Um, and they're just they're embracing me as a person. And I don't know how I got lucky to, get them to always kind of come back to the well whenever I do something. Even my actors, like Danielle was the second lead in my student thesis short film, and
I
she,
was actually going to try to give her a shout out before we
yeah,
stopped.
yeah,
Yeah, Danielle Kellerman,
yeah, she's unbelievable.
excellent lead.
So she's so amazing, and you know, she knows me as a person now. And we've kind of she has acted in everything I've ever done, and she's always game, and she's very open to being vulnerable. And um, yeah, I can't speak more highly of her. She is just unbelievable, and she's my favorite. You know, I'll always try and write something for her and get her involved, short, feature, whatever. I would always love to get her, on set with me and, perform. And she's
I
great.
might even assume you had a level of comfort knowing that you had her in mind for this because that lead character in Loom, pretty much the whole film is on that person's shoulders. If that performance
Yeah.
isn't where it needs to be, everything falls apart, right? So
Everything, literally everything falls apart. And she really delivers. She's great in the quiet moments. I feel like sometimes when, you're starting off, you work with actors or you see actors in other films that it's almost like they're waiting for to say their lines, so they're not necessarily they're almost just waiting to say their line, and there's no acting in the eyes in the interim when they're waiting for their co-star across the table from them. But Danielle's always doing something very unique and interesting with her eyes in the quiet moments, whether she's alone because there's a lot of moments in the film where she's alone by herself. I mean, she's really alone 80% of the movie. And there are the scenes with the character Jude, played by John Thomas Potvin. And you know, but the other scenes that don't have John in them, it's either her by herself or voiceover. So she's just performing with either me or someone else doing a line read off camera, and we add, the voice in post. So Louis was the OS Louis voice was just purely we didn't have him on set. John Segal, I've known him for years too. Known him for about 11 years, and um, you know, she's just always doing something very interesting with her eyes. And I wrote it for her. Basically, I was like, "This is your thing," and it's so funny because every once in a while I'll send her something, and the line I always tell her is like, If you'll have me again, this is yours." So, and she's like, "Of course, I'll always come back." So we have a great partnership, and she's just unbelievable. Love working with her.
excellent, excellent. Anyone else who deserves a shout out before we run?
Let's see. So, there's, John was just great. Like John, we actually went through a casting process for that. And John, um, I think we had 12 people read through a casting process and send in audition tapes. And, he was number 7 in line. So out of 12, he was number 7. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'll keep watching the other tapes, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be this guy. And he was the only callback. We offered him, like the role, and, we agreed to get him in. And he just has this young Mickey Rourke quality to him. We put him in a leather jacket. He just looks so effortlessly cool. He smokes a cigarette in a very cool way. That's a big prop in the film, is smoking cigarettes.
Well, and he actually had a really nice balance between, for lack of better adjectives, cute and dangerous, which is what you needed for, right?
Yeah,
because you don't know if he was a negative part of her past or a positive part of her past, and he actually kept the line blurry. Which,
he's great, and he just read, even his audition tape. A lot of people, were trying to, you don't always include scene description in insides for an audition, and a lot of people were trying to make it too personal and too kind of like punch it up in a way, almost like a comedy or like a buddy thing. And John, if you just did a time lapse of his 3-minute audition tape, I don't think he moves more than an inch or two in the frame. He's so still. It's all about the face and the smoking of the cigarette. It's like the way how he gave that audition tape was very special to me, and he totally understood it. He knew it was about like the stillness, and it wasn't, his reading wasn't a faster pace of dialogue. It was like super slow and very slow and intimate, and playing with the silences. And that's something that I really, really appreciated. And lastly, who did I shout out already? I shouted out my sister numerous times. However good you think I am at what I do, you should meet Nicole. She's, 10 times better at what she does in her line of work than whatever it is that I do. We talked about Jen, production design, my sound editor, pretty much everyone.
I'll throw a name at you that I'm
editor.
Sure you want. Yeah, Douglas Gordon.
Oh yeah, Doug. I've known Doug for about 12 years. This was the second film that he shot for me, and my editor, Jesse Nampolo, he was my TA in film school, and now we're just kind of like, cinematic life partners. And everything that he kind of does, I'm involved with. Everything that I do, he'll edit. And those are two long contacts that I've had. Probably the longest out of my whole crew, aside from my sister, of course. But Doug and Jesse, Jesse's edited everything that I've done, I think. Yeah. The only thing he didn't do was my student film, because he couldn't. He was my TA. So he was more of, advising, along the way. But I can't imagine doing really anything without, Dimpolo cutting it. And, he has a very interesting perspective. He's a huge fan of slow cinema. And I think it's a great pairing, because I'm very into that space as well. Maybe not as deeply as him, but I think when I write something, and like Loom is that way, and hopefully The Dark That Dwells is that way as well, there's going to be moments where I think bringing someone in with, stillness in the edit, and to let things sit and breathe, as desired, is just going to make for a better picture. So I think, whatever we I mentioned Venn diagram earlier. We have a pretty big overlap on the Venn diagram, but the outskirts of it, for on my side and his side, I think, is a really cool kind of, sort of, I guess aesthetic, yes, but it's a really cool just sort of practice to kind of seep into each other's pictures. So, him in the editing room with that kind of, love for slow cinema, I think that caters to a film like Loom for sure. 1,000%.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we're good.
I think we're good.
I will do the wrap up. I will add that besides in the introduction, or somewhere along the way, we talked about having a link to watch the film someday in the show notes, There will be a link to your Instagram in the show notes.
Yes. Yeah. at jc3.mov.
Yep. But we'll make that a clickable link. That's
okay, great.
That's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And I will wrap us up with my closing spiel, which first, thank you so much for being on, Jesse.
Thank you for having me. Truly a blast. I mean, it went by in a blink of an eye, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's really fun. All right. Everyone listening, if you want to learn more about this podcast, go to discoverindiefilm.com. On social media, it's always at DIFwins. I have somewhat managed to quit social media. I don't post anymore, and I really try hard not to even lurk. And that is my way of saying that if you write to at DIFwins on any of the social media platforms, the wonderful podcast producer Karina Wolf will be the one who answers your questions, unless it's on Blue Sky, because I can handle Blue Sky because there's nobody there. So anyway, and I don't get assaulted by ads and algorithmic amplification.
Yeah.
Needs to say, I'm gonna hop off that soapbox as soon as possible to say, okay, so that's discoverindiefilm.com for the podcast and everything that grows from it. If you want to learn about Sherman Oaks Film Festival and its sister festival, Filmvasion Los Angeles, that were both mentioned during this podcast, just go to discoverindiefilm.org. That is the nonprofit that runs both festivals that we hold in the LA area, and you can learn about them there. And there's also, if you end up using that to get to the Film Invasion Los Angeles website, you'll notice that Film Invasion Los Angeles last year expanded. We found a team down in actually alumni of Sherman Oaks Film Festival who live in Lima, Peru. Stepped up to the plate, and they ran the film festival, Film Invasion Lima in Peru. And we held it in January of this year, and it was awesome. And we're going to have it in February of 2027 because turns out second week of January is too soon after the holidays for me to make it down there. And, it's not all about me, but also it was, when you're trying to get files from people and it's the week between Christmas and New Year's, you can't always get a hold of people. So
December 29th, hey, we need the DCP.
Right? I mean, it's
not going to happen. Yeah,
it's literally like, we could use your poster. And it's like everyone needs a week or two after New Year's just to recover, right? So from all the holidays, not to mention that Sherman Oaks Film Festival is the weekend after Thanksgiving for me. So for me to turn around and be involved in another one 5 weeks later, needless to say, when we chose January 16th for 2026 for the inaugural year, I was way too ambitious about my bandwidth. But the team down there, Chevy and Pilar, did a wonderful job.
That's amazing. Great.
And I'm happy to say that, one thing I didn't mention when you were praising Sherman Oaks Film Festival and its 10th anniversary is that for the 10th anniversary, we threw our unofficial motto on the t-shirts, the 10th anniversary shirts, to say the festival that gives a shit. And that's
what you really do.
That came from an alumni. Alumni said it to us at one of the festivals, and we always get emails from people saying that was one of the best festival experiences I've had. And for Lima, we got emails that people down in South America saying I attended Film Invasion Lima and it was one of the best experiences I've had.
That's amazing.
Like,
that's great.
Oh, that made me feel good.
Yeah, and you really do feel. It's not just it's not just blowing smoke, as we would say up here in Boston. Not blowing smoke up your ass. That's like what we say in Boston. To like,
you say my fucking ass.
Yeah. We're not blowing smoke up your fucking ass. But you really do feel it, And it was you're the only one I've really been in long-standing contact with after the actual festival, and I want to be a part of the alumni thing and everything. And I mean, you really do care, and it shows, and it's a great experience. And anytime that I can be a part of it again, I would jump at it. So
much appreciated. Much appreciated. I always joke, but it's not really a joke. I'm like, hey, it's a social experiment. We're seeing if we do things the right way, if we can succeed. Because Lord knows there's better ways to run a festival, like commercially. There's better, shorter Q&As and more films, and not caring about quality would be much better business.
Yeah. But, Sometimes not. Film festivals shouldn't always have to be about it's about the filmmakers.
Well, and that's the thing is our the experiment is, if we do everything the right way, can we also succeed right alongside the festivals? Hey, I know who they are, and there's festivals,
Yeah.
That will be the same weekend as us, and I'll look at their lineup and I'll see all the films that we did not accept that are playing there.
Right.
That are local, and sent the kind of email that said, we've got 50 people dying to see this.
Right.
The whole cast and crew. We didn't do a cast and crew screening. Can we do it at your festival? And we're like, God, we wish it was good, because it's not that we're against selling tickets.
Right.
We just only want to show great there's too many wonderful indie films for us to lower our standards. Just,
Well, and it's one of those, this is like a thing too. It's like, I truly did not see a bad or poorly made film at Sherman Oaks.
Yeah, and because you flew out from Boston, you were there like every day, right?
You was there every day. I made the most of it. I went every day for the day that I screened. I went to 2 blocks. I was there pretty much all day because I wanted to be nearby. But even the earlier days, I did at least 1 block each of those days too. I was kind of always around, and I saw, I think 4 or 5 blocks altogether. I think 4 blocks altogether. And, literally didn't see anything that, because sometimes you'll go in and you're like, it's like, oh,
Well, what's worse than seeing a block of 9, 10 films and your film's in it, by the way, sometimes. It's like piece of crap, decent, my film, piece of crap, good film, piece of crap. Yeah. And you're like,
because it's hard to get a barometer, because, for also like festivals for filmmakers too, it's like you're trying to get a barometer of what your output is, and is it good enough? And sometimes when, you have, your film that you genuinely think is good and well made and everything. And, if, the films that sandwich your film in the block, if they're, not of a similar quality, you're like, oh man, am I?
Yeah. Am I on their level or?
Yeah.
And it really removes that sense of pride, when you get accepted, when you become an official selection, you're like, this is great. And then if you see that the people running it may not care about quality, it's like, kind of robs you of that good feeling afterwards.
Yeah. And, there's also, some kind of, there's a lot of politicking, obviously, as you know, but the one thing for better or worse for Loom is every place that we submitted to, the most we've ever done is send like an intro email. Hey, here's our EPK, our electronic press kit. Here's our EPK. This is the crew. Thank you for considering us. That's like the most that we'll do, and I think every place that we've gotten into, I feel really good about it. Like we've had loads of, like turnaways. So we've been turned away by, a lot of places. But the places that we have gotten in to, and especially Sherman Oaks, you feel really good about it because when you show up, that it's, like a merit-based thing and not necessarily just, like politics.
Yeah. And then thankfully you did come to some screenings and it worked.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I hope that gardener is not, wow, here I am. We almost wrapped up before this. Wow. Okay. I assume you can hear that.
No, I can.
Oh, wow. There's the loudest weed whacker outside my window. My neighbor's gardener is here. And that's how good this microphone is that you don't hear.
Yeah, good.
I probably should just.
I'm wearing headphones too, so I can't hear.
Yeah, you're totally going pro. Yeah. Well, I probably should just delete this talking about the gardener. Oh my God, it's so loud I can't hear you. So anyway, thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for having me.